Hello! Hey, dr.Draw Alex here, and in this video we're gonna take a look at 6 common perspective mistakes made in drawing and visual arts. But first, let me explain what perspective is. Perspective is the art of representing a 3-dimensional object on a 2-dimensional surface, such as a piece of paper. For example, this is flat and this feels like it has volume and is 3-dimensional. I say feel because it's not really 3-dimensional, it's an illusion. Ooh. Anyways, the reason this feels 3D is because the box is drawn using converging lines to a vanishing point. A vanishing point lives on a horizon line in most cases. And just like a star has radiating lines. Those lines actually guide the edge of the box to converge towards a vanishing point. And this also works in real life. Like you see in this photo, all the edges of the buildings, the roofs of the cars, and the marks of the road are angled towards the vanishing point. But now let's take a look at the most common mistakes I see people make using perspective. And trust me, I've made them all. Mistake number 1. No converging grid lines. We established that a vanishing point, which lives on the horizon line, is kinda essential to perspective. It's what helps us create depth in a drawing. But sometimes I see this. Okay, it has a horizon line, that's good, but other than that, it's just as helpful as a butter knife in a gunfight. AKA, it's fucking useless. If you fill it with figures, it doesn't help to create depth. So you could just as well not use it. If you don't want to work with a vanishing point, that's totally fine, but then you're better off using an isometric perspective, which looks like this, or this, or this. An isometric perspective has lines going to the right and lines going to the left. But these lines don't diverge or converge. They are all parallel, which makes depth kinda impossible. There's nothing wrong with using an isometric perspective. It's been used for years in hundreds of video games, even today. It's a simple way of creating a layout and context. But in all these examples, you don't see a horizon line. You can't mix an isometric perspective with an horizon. Once you use an horizon, you're bound to using a grid. Mistake number 2, no measuring. I know we all want to be quick and work towards a result we can show to impress people. The faster, the better. It doesn't need to be correct, it just needs to be finished. So instead of taking the time to measure and understand how perspective works, we quickly work towards a result. But actually, all of these boxers are using a different vanishing point. Don't get me wrong, we're not robots. I'm not saying every line has to be made with a ruler and aligned perfectly with the perspective, like in this image. Hell, you can even draw stuff like this and don't care about perspective at all. Perspective is just following rules, and I know rules are made to be broken, but you can only break the rules if you understand why these rules have been developed in the first place. A drawing, like every craft, is freaking hard and it takes years to master. It's not something you can learn in 3 weeks, even if you're Einstein. Drawing like this, which is made with a hasty feeling, isn't made to understand the rules. It's made to get the result and finish it. But as you can see, it has tons of different vanishing points and thus misses consistency. There's a reason why Lord Kelvin is famous for the quote, "To measure is to know." If you want to create a drawing like this, which is done by the famous Jung Gi, you have to understand that even in this drawing, perspective is used. And while Kim might not draw a grid, he visualizes it and uses it to plan out the objects in the scene and how they relate to each other. Although Kim could do this in his imagination, there's no shame in sketching something like this before you start a drawing. Even if you have something like this, it's still super hard to fill it with believable figures, and in this case, a bike. But now that we've taken the time to measure, we have a fundament to build our drawing. We might still make some mistakes or things that don't work nice, but those details aren't really important because the drawing as a whole does work. And those little mistakes give the work a human touch. You'll see that when you've measured up front, your brain slowly but steadily gets more familiar with how the perspective works. And you'll be able to draw things in your own style. You can add things in a way you like. For example, the interaction and speed bubbles I add here. I do that because I like to give it a bit more story. This is what I mean with artistic confidence. I felt confident while drawing this because of the red lines and sketch, and understand how the perspective was working. In other words, measuring and slowing down is a pretty good deal.
I don't blame you. Damn good deal.
Mistake number 3, not using a grid. I get it, we see a master draw a whole scene from imagination without a sketch or drawing a perspective grid. It's impressive to say the least, but if you haven't practiced perspective for about 9,000 hours, don't be stupid and do something like this yourself. The only reason Jung Gi could draw without a grid is because he has drawn tons of grids. Just like learning a language. If you practice enough, you can speak a language without looking into a dictionary. But first, you need that dictionary. Starting with a simple horizon line here in yellow and adding a perspective grid here in red is a great start for a drawing, but it does more than help you. It serves as a blueprint for your audience. This drawing, or better said sketch, has tons of lines going through it, but I found that people actually enjoy seeing all those lines because it gives them an idea on how the drawing was made and feeds their curiosity. As humans, we have a dying need to understand why things work the way they work. This is why a 5-year-old kid keeps asking why. Why? And it's why we enjoy watching time lapses of how a house is built or how to make dinner, like Gordon Ramsay. We want to understand why, so we feel confident we can do it ourselves. In other words, drawing a perspective grid answers a pretty important question for your audience. That's the power of a sketch. Apart from being loose, it shows the construction or process of a drawing. Even if the drawing isn't finished, it can still be a strong expression. This drawing, for example, is nothing more than a blueprint. The figures are just stacked boxes, and the blocks are there just to visualize the perspective and depth. And the reel of it went pretty viral on Instagram. Drawing isn't about going viral, but it is about feeling confident in expressing yourself. And that's not only done by showing a nice result, but it's also about opening up in the process. And in this case, that means using a perspective grid. So the next time when you sketch a design and perspective grid and finally go for a result, don't erase the underdrawing. The sketch gives the viewer an idea on how you came to this result. Mistake number 4, placing vanishing points too close to each other. So we know we should use vanishing points, but how far should these vanishing points be from each other? Far away or close to each other? If we look at this drawing by Jung Gi, we see the vanishing points are really close to each other. 2 of them are on the page and 1 is just off the edge. So does this mean we have to place our vanishing points within the frame of the border? Not necessarily. For example, Mobius rarely puts a vanishing point in his drawings. Placing vanishing points close together is also known as a curvilinear perspective or fisheye lens, which is used a lot in GoPros and enhances the field of view. Things far away seem very far away and things close by seem very close by. It enhances the dynamic feeling, which is pretty cool. A fisheye lens is nothing more than a lens you can clip on your camera. But if you're a beginner and you're trying to understand perspective, you might be better off using a simple perspective with less vanishing points. Imagine your brain being this platform. Using just 1 vanishing point can take up quite a lot of space on your working memory. Imagine using 5. If you understand how to use 1 and you get confident using it, it will slowly take up less space on your working memory. And then you can use another vanishing point. That's nice and all, but it doesn't tell us where we should place our vanishing points. Well, start with a horizon line on your piece of paper and try to stay away from these danger zones, especially in the beginning. You'll get a grid like this, which is pretty easy to learn and gives you an idea on how perspective works. And this is also used by masters like Mobius. Mistake number 5, no depth. I see tons of beginners drawing figures, but there isn't a lot of difference between the size of the first and the second figure, or the second and the fourth figure, and so on. All figures are approximately the same size. But remember this drawing by Kim? See how the figures on the right, who are further away from the camera, are smaller than the figures on the foreground? Just like boxes recede in the distance and get smaller, figures, or anything for that matter, does too. There's actually a pretty cool trick you can use to measure the size of your figures. When we have a horizon line and draw a figure, we know the top and bottom of the figure, which gives an indication of the grid. But there's another landmark, here, where the figure hits the horizon line. Say we want to draw another figure over here. We know the top and bottom. Well, you know what, let's do it without the bottom. The second figure will also cross the horizon line around the chest/shoulder, just like our first figure. We can use these landmarks of our earlier figure to determine the size of our second figure, and this enhances the feeling of depth. Mistake number 6, starting with the end. Seeing a master artist at work is quite impressive to say the least, but in most cases it inspires us to do something similar. I don't really see myself as a painter, but whenever I go to a museum and see a painting like this one made by Van Gogh, I get inspired to try something like this myself. While I'm painting, I set expectations very high because I want to create something similar like Van Gogh, which rarely happens because I'm not that crafted. When we see a master artist use perspective, we set expectations very high. We expect ourselves to create something similar, but that's impossible. This drawing by Kim looks easy, but now you know how freaking hard it actually is to make. Apart from the fact he's using perspective, we see clothing, animals, shading, ink work. It's just there's so much going on. We can't expect ourselves as beginners to do something similar. Instead of setting high expectations and forcing yourself to do something you can't do yet, start at the beginning and take baby steps. Get familiarized with a one-point perspective. I know making mistakes is annoying and I used to tear up my drawings whenever I made a mistake. But now I look at it differently. I try to see it as a moment of learning. And instead of getting frustrated now, I actually get thankful for learning something. And this increases my artistic confidence. And I think you can learn the same thing. Just try to be open and learn from your mistakes. And this won't only increase your artistic confidence that you can use in every part of your life, it will also make the process more enjoyable. I know it sounds insignificant using a one-point perspective, but if we look at these movie clips by Stanley Kubrick, you see he uses a one-point perspective in most of his movies, and he's seen as one of the most influential film directors. Doing something simple seems easy, but it's the other way around. Doing something simple is very complex and it takes years to master. So start where you are and pick it up from there. Learning a skill like perspective isn't just done by drawing. It's also done by studying the people that you admire, like you see in this book by Kim Jung Gi. I filled it with sticky notes and did tons of studies on his work. I'll drop a link to his book in the description so you can study it just like I have. But for now, I want to thank you for watching this video. Be sure to hit the like button, share your comments, and share this video with someone who might enjoy watching it as well. Stay diggity drawing. Adios. Fucking hell. Mistakes. Today. Perspective mistakes. Let's go! Explain what? No, how? Let's go! Mia Mario! And tools are made to be broken. No, tools aren't. Quickly. Bye bye!